Hi everyone, this is Tanishka and this is my new moon in Libra video blog. So let's get started. It's happening depending on which side of the date line you're on, either the 28th or the 29th of September. So in Australia that's Sunday the 29th of September. In New York that's Saturday the 28th of September, and the same for London and LA. All right, so what's happening? Well, first of all, it's a supermoon. So the moon is very close to Earth at the moment. So this will really make our emotional sensitivity pronounced. And it's already very pronounced. We've had two supermoons previously. This is, the closest that the moon is to Earth for the whole year. But also we're coming down off that full moon in Pisces. So our sensitivity is up right now. Now, whilst we might want to run and hide, under a rock, our sensitivity is wonderful for informing us of what's healthy and what isn't. And with Mars still in Virgo, it's very much, okay, what action do I need to take to ensure that my health is a priority? Okay. Now with this new moon being in Libra, that puts the focus on, so we're still going to be scrutinizing whether or not the relationship dynamics that we're in, be it with family, with partners, with children, with neighbors, with friends, business colleagues, are healthy. Okay. And our body, our sensitivity is what we need to acknowledge to really get a sense of where am I being, delusional, putting the rose-colored glasses on, making excuses because you don't want to look at the truth. Now, speaking of the truth, Black Moon Lilith on the 18th of September moved into Aries. Now, Lilith is the archetypal wild woman. You might know her as Kali Ma, or as Sekhmet, or Oya, the storm goddess. She is the agent of chaos, similar to Aries, because Lilith derived from the Sumerian Lilitu, the storm goddess, she who brings in big change, often unexpected change, but necessary change. So particularly the women out there may have felt anger coming up since September the 18th, because Lilith moving into Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. This is the fiery planet that says, where am I frustrated? And that frustration, that red warning light, is pointing me towards a situation that is dishonoring. Yeah, whether boundaries have been crossed or dishonored, or your needs have been negated and invalidated. This is saying something needs to change. You need to take appropriate action. So to have Lilith moving in there, she's really going to be calling out the shadow, okay? The shadow being the unconscious thoughts or words and behaviors of others and how that's impacted her. And because we have Chiron in Aries at the moment, Chiron is the wounded masculine, so in particular, Lilith is going to be calling out the shadow of the wounded masculine. So what does that mean? The wounded masculine is the disempowered expression of masculine energy, whether that's in a man or whether that's in a woman, okay? But it's somebody who is not emotionally and psychologically mature. So they've neglected their inner self, okay, which is the feminine, the soul, and their masculine, which is the rational mind and materialism, has become dominant, okay? So they're ego dominant. And when someone is ego dominant, they're like a child. They unconsciously expect everyone else to prioritize them and their needs, like a child who expects love to oscillate around them, the way planets move around the sun, or the way a mother focuses on her baby and doesn't make that baby aware of her own needs until that baby developmentally is at an age after the age of 7, when they have a sense of other. if somebody is not mature emotionally and psychologically, they don't have an awareness of other and of the other's needs as being equally important and deserving of consideration. And so they may be, you know, oh, why is she so angry? Why is Lilith, you know, fuming? And they don't realize what they've done. Like a child, they're completely naive. They thought so long as they were getting their needs met, then everything was fine. So having Lilith move into that same sign, Aries, as Chiron, it's really likely to rip the scab off that festering, unhealed wound, okay, for all of us, to show us what we weren't aware of, because the shadow is, you know, what we don't know, okay? So this is a wonderful time for healing if we can dare to look at how our own child has made choices trying to get their needs met in an unconscious, immature way that meant, you know, that they were re-wounding themselves and others. Now, it's also important to add that, you know, there's a lot of shaming of anger in our culture. Anger is necessary so long it is appropriate anger. In other words, you know, if our safety is at risk, then that is a wonderful sort of alert mechanism, okay? But anger can really inspire us to make change, to take action where it's necessary, okay? Now this year, 2019, we think about, so 2 is about how we do relationship, 1 is about the self, new beginnings, and 9 is about ending. So it's kind of the alpha and omega, yeah? In preparation for next year, which is going to be a huge year, a colossal year of change, because we're going to have on January the 12th, Saturn and Pluto exact conjunction, so appearing like they are on top of each other. And Saturn, I've spoken about this briefly in the past, is, you know, old father time, rules, regulations, traditions, conservatism, patriarchy in a word, okay? And Pluto is the Dark Lord, okay? Pluto is the underworld. Misuses of power will be coming out and seen. And we're seeing that very much with, you know, everyone from Epstein to Prince Andrew and Weinstein. I mean, it's, you know, Cardinal Pell, it's all coming out. So this year, if we think about the 1 and the 9, we're being asked to look at, okay, well, who do we want to create with next year? Because next year, 2022 is all about cooperation, collaboration, co-creation, partnership. So my prediction is that we're going to see a lot of beloveds coming together in 2020. For those that have done the work, those that have laid the foundations to be in right relationship with their opposite through creating sacred marriage within. So understanding the polarities through understanding the 7 faces of the feminine and the masculine that govern the chakras, the energy centers. So one's psyche can be cohesive, integrated, whole, holy, holistic, so that those unconscious aspects aren't coming out in ways that we're not aware of. So Lilith, in the sort of lead up to that, moving into Aries, if we think about Lilith, you know, she was known as the dragon woman, the serpentine goddess of Kundalini. And if we think about the ley lines of the earth, the dragon lines of the earth, Lilith Lilith is the messenger of the Gaia consciousness, okay, which we're all a part of. So it's important that we understand that we are part of the Gaia consciousness, that our choices matter, and that if we don't want to experience huge earth changes, okay, with devastating consequences, we need to wake up to ourselves. We need to wake up to our unconscious behaviors and make the necessary changes. And the reason for that is we have Uranus, the planet of awakening, of kundalini, of sudden change, of energy in Taurus. It's been there for almost a year, so it's got another 6 years to go in its 7-year cycle. And this is when we're most likely to see earth changes. But Lilith is also an awakener. Yeah, as the goddess of Kundalini, she is the one that awakens people, both energetically through Shaktipat, through sexual initiation, but also through calling out the shadows. So my understanding is that the Lilith is rising in all of us, the feminine part of all of us, regardless of our gender, to get angry and to say, that's it, things need to change, whether that's the climate change marches that are happening, you know, or whether it's people saying, you know, we need equality of the sexes, but it's appropriate anger, yeah, because things won't change without that energy rising and demanding change. So the more we dare to get angry and take right action, the less the Earth Mother has to shake us out of our complacency, out of our sleep state, and do it for us. So don't be afraid of your anger. I'm not saying spew it over people left, right, and center. Channel that energy into making change, into taking a stand and counting for that which you believe in, particularly that which is impacting the earth. So if we think about Uranus and Taurus, that's the earth, that's love, okay? So where is the shadow impacting one's ability to give and receive love, and how is that affecting your loved ones? But it's also the body. We think about Taurus, it's very much, it's an earth sign, and it's about the embodiment of the goddess in a human earthly form. So, yeah. Lilith is also the one who identifies how we've given our power away. Okay, so this is a time, particularly now that Saturn has just gone direct after 6 months of being retrograde, so appearing backwards. This is a time when Lilith is likely to say no and set very clear boundaries to those that are operating in a patriarchal consciousness, so unconsciously expecting the feminine to serve them, yeah, which is an unhealed mother complex, yeah, expecting every interpersonal relationship between masculine and feminine to be that of the mother and the holy child rather than between two adults. And this is something that's been very anchored by religion, yeah, the Madonna and child archetypes as, you know, the predominant image we see of male-female relating. And any form of holy, sacred sexual union of equals is seen as, you know, taboo, it's demonized as carnal. This is something I'm writing about in my book, In the Grail, because I believe very, very strongly that it's through the restoration of the hieros gamos, of the practice of sacred union, that we will restore the health of the earth, of the land, using our bodies as sacred conduits and making love at different vortice points on the earth during the seasonal vortices, and the celestial vortices, which is what the ancient religion was. It was a religion of love, where, anyway, more about that in my book to come. So we have Venus and Sun now in Libra. They've moved into Libra. So this will also be enabling us out of self-love, okay, to look at situations that don't feel fair, that don't feel balanced, where we don't feel like we're being treated equally, and speaking up in a way that is diplomatic, okay? So Libra is able to assert itself and explain itself very, very clearly as a peacemaker, okay? So this self-worth that we're feeling, particularly now that Saturn is direct, Saturn is about taking responsibility for ourselves. You know, if we're in a dysfunctional relationship, really we've only got ourselves to blame for staying in it. So it's only self-love and self-worth that will say no deal and remove ourselves from a situation that is re-wounding our wounds rather than healing them. If we think about, you know, our role models for relating, we've most of us grown up with the masculine not giving, okay, having that sense of entitlement, okay, simply by the fact that he's a male because of the patriarchal conditioning. I know myself, so often I'm at the supermarket, and it's happened both here in Bali and in Australia, and if, you know, I arrive to have my fruit weighed at the same time as a man, the cashier will always serve the man first, whether the cashier is male or female. And these are just the small little things that a man is probably oblivious to and going, well, you know, we've got equality. Well, you're not aware of it if you're the one who is in the position of privilege. And as a white woman, then I don't understand experientially the degree to which my brothers and sisters who have dark skin have to be treated as second-class citizens. So this is very much a time of, you know, us realizing what isn't fair, both personally in our relationships and in the macrocosm. And I'm really clear on this. Patriarchy will not end unless we make it personal. It's about the choices we make in our personal lives, in our personal relationships, that will shift that archaic thinking. Within all of us, we have, you know, the sacred masculine, just as we have the disempowered or the wounded masculine. And the wounded masculine won't stand up for himself. He is impotent to take right action, to be chivalrous, to stand up and defend the honor and the sensitivities of the feminine part of ourselves or of the vulnerable children or, you know, elderly or women. So this is about us finding that inner good king, that sacred masculine, the sacred king who stands up and says, you are not worthy of my love, my presence, my time, if you do not have the awareness to honor me. Yeah. So I feel this is, you know, a pandemic at the moment on the planet. I did a short video about this earlier last week. So that's on my Moon Woman page about how we're seeing in my client sessions and my friends' client sessions, boundaries are a real theme at the moment. And we're going to find that especially now with Saturn moving direct, people really saying that's enough. You know, that sacred masculine stepping up and setting boundaries that honor the sensitivity, honor the vulnerability, honor the feminine or the inner self. Now, this is a time of new beginnings. We've just entered a new season. For those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, that's autumn. So you've just, well, we're in the final day. It's a 3-day vortex, the equinox. So you're experiencing the black wedding, or the dark wedding as it was known in Tantra. So this is the seasonal gate when you will be exposed, maybe quite abruptly, to the shadow in your partner, and how they respond when you point that out will indicate whether or not this relationship will survive the dark months. Okay. For those of us in the Southern Hemisphere, we are experiencing the final day of the white wedding, or the spring equinox. So not just a song by Billy Idol in the 80s. And it's not about, you know, a sexually chaste newborn virgin coming to the altar. That was a patriarchal distortion. The white wedding is when one takes vows to themselves to review, what will I accept and what won't I accept in partnership? And will I stand by myself? Yeah, will I make sure that if I'm not honored, I honor myself, I honor the vows that I took to myself to not stay. So yeah, it's something that I did the other day, where I wrote down, reviewed what it was that you know, I would and wouldn't accept in a partnership, and vows to myself. And you might like to create a ritual bath where you you know, exfoliate the past, maybe put some milk in the bath, so it's a bath of nurturance and self-love. And for those of you in partnerships, this is a really good time to actually have a chaste courtship between now and the Beltane, which is the next seasonal vortex at the end of October. So October 31st through to November 8th, that window. Because by having a chaste courtship, it's an opportunity to really get to know each other on a soul level again, without sex getting in the way. But you know, there's a template for that in my book, Creating Sacred Union in Partnerships. It's basically the 7 dates at the 7 gates, so reconnecting on all levels. For those of you meeting people around this time, often we do meet new possible partners around the equinox. For those of you, you know, in the Southern Hemisphere, this is the time of starting relationship gently and slowly with a chaste courtship, rather than jumping in, fusing at the base, and then hoping things go well. For those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, if you meet someone around this time, my observation and experience is that often it will be a very shadowy dance. So this may be somebody who really is not good for you, and it may be a painful journey, but you will learn a lot out of it. So up to you whether or not you, with that awareness, still persist. So we have currently 6 of the 10 planets in cardinal signs. So the cardinal signs are the initiating signs. Hence it is a time of new beginnings. I mean, particularly for those in the Southern Hemisphere who are opening to possibility, opening to love after the contraction of autumn and winter. For those in the Northern Hemisphere, this is when the contraction begins, when the turning inward begins, and the deep inner work begins of processing. So an ideal time for esoteric study and contemplation and journaling. Now, it's also significant that we have just finished the sun's transit through Virgo. Virgo is the last of the first 6 signs on the zodiac wheel, which are the personal signs, okay, or the younger signs. Now, with the sun moving into Libra, we are journeying into interpersonal, okay? So how we as a person interface with others and with the world and with spirit. That's the journey from Libra around to Pisces. Now, Libra, the first of that, now it's an underworld journey, okay, especially for those in the Northern Hemisphere. Libra is about relationships. So this is where we really get initiated and tested. You can think that you're doing just fine, but as soon as you're in a relationship, your issues really get brought to the fore, and you see just how healed or unhealed your core wounds are. So it's also interesting to note that what's playing out for you at the moment around this equinox gate will probably be an extension or a follow-up from what you experienced around June 21st, 23rd, which was the solstice. So if we think about the fixed cross, which is the solstices and the equinoxes, one sets the tone for the other. So think back to what happened around the 21st of June, and you'll see that what's playing out right now is a completion of that, tying up loose ends, that sort of thing. And similarly, what action we take now in this equinox is going to impact the next solstice, okay? It's like everything builds upon the previous gate, how we responded to our lesson, to our initiation. So we've now had Jupiter recently go direct. We've got Saturn now direct. And on October the 2nd, Pluto will go direct. So that's 3 of the outer planets. So the stagnation that we have felt in the first part of this year is now being cleared. And there's a sense of, oh, I'm free, I can move forwards, okay? What else do I want to say? So this new moon is happening at 5 degrees Libra. For those of you that have things in Libra in your natal chart, you might want to see what's around 5 degrees. You can get a free chart at astro.com, no affiliation with me, because that'll really be tested at the moment. We have Venus conjunct Mercury in Libra. So this means this gives us the ability to really speak clearly how we have felt loved and unloved, okay? And for others maybe to understand that for the first time. We have Saturn squaring Venus. So this can be a very challenging aspect. It really asks us to look at our father issues and to look at, you know, where we need to set boundaries so that we create the possibility for more loving partnerships through loving ourselves by being that inner disciplinarian that says, are you worthy of my hand? Yeah. Okay, let me just jump in here. So if we think about Libra, it's the scales of justice. So for us to create really balanced, harmonious interactions with others, we need to understand where we are out of balance and address that. And as we approach the new moon, if we think about new moon, it's when the moon has the least amount of light that it's reflecting of the sun. So it's dark. So it's when the shadow looms and we can see the shadow of the sign that the new moon is going to be in. So this is when we see the shadow side of relationships. And we also see our own shadow when it comes to where we've been out of balance. So, you know, if you're someone that's been focusing on work and neglecting your relationships, yeah, or if you've been focusing on the family and neglecting your passion, yeah, or if you've been neglecting your health, this is a time when you're really going to notice that there may be catalysts that get you to restore the balance. Okay. What else do I want to say? Yeah, I don't think I need to say that. It's very much a time of also negotiating so that we can create win-win outcomes, okay? But I want to make the point that this is only possible if both parties are prepared to equally be part of the negotiation process, okay? In other words, if we have one party that's focusing on creating win-win solutions and, you know, looking at it from the other's point of view, which is all positive Libra, and what compromises need to be made so that both parties get their needs met, and the other person is stuck in shadow Aries, the opposite sign of Libra, and they're in me, then there is no possibility of a win-win outcome, okay? So this is where people can go into codependence, over-functioning for someone who's under-functioning, and, you know, try to create win-win outcomes, and, you know, and they get more and more out of balance as they're compensating and over-functioning for the other. So, you know, that's been very much the model of partnership in the patriarchy, that women tended to compensate at a cost to themselves to accommodate male partners that didn't contribute as much to the union, because they've grown up in a paradigm that said, you know, their needs would be accommodated as the first priority. So we are actively trying to change that, and it's a painful transition. Yeah, it's a time of changing the old dance, so that, you know, if you think about being with a dancing partner that's standing on your feet, it's painful. But it's also painful for the other party to have their flaws pointed out. But it's a time of transition, okay, and a necessary one. So this is a time for us to really attune to our intuition, the higher mind. If we think of the image of Lady Justice, it's actually the goddess Athena holding the sword of truth, which the Celts knew as Excalibur, and the scales of justice, of balance and equilibrium. And it's with our intuition, that middle path. So we're not polarizing between right and wrong, good and bad. Yeah, we're going with, okay, what's my knowing? Yeah. And to do that, we have to attune to our conscience, to our heart, to that wisdom of the heart. So this is a time, rather than being caught up in pros and cons, which shadow Libra can go into being paralyzed by not being able to make decisions because they're always scared of whether they're making the right choice, doing the right thing to please other people, seeking approval. Yeah, this is all shadow. The way through, the way of justice, is the way of the heart, okay, the Tao, which is, what is my knowing? And that is the higher mind. So if we think about Libra, it's, you know, and Athena is very Libran. I mean, we see her image on the, what do you call that? Not the logo, the emblem in judicial courts. And that's because in sort of the ancient Greek culture, she was said to be brought in if the jury couldn't make a decision, and she would always side on the side of mercy. What is merciful? Okay, what is going to restore the dignity of the human condition? But, you know, she is the feminine archetype within men and women that governs the solar plexus. So she is the one who takes back her inner authority by not operating out of the lower mind, the rational mind, who's always trying to do the right thing and win approval, but by finding the inner authority by listening to intuition. So that's the way through, so that you are, really making clear decisions with a clear mind. So I hope that's helpful. And I wish you all the best this week. If you feel to share this, you're most welcome. And have a beautiful week leading up to this new moon. It's a time when the energy will wane. So a time of, just quietude, of tuning to the self, and very much focusing on, okay, so if I'm going to give my best in relationships, I need to ascertain whether or not this is a relationship that can bring out my best, whether it will be a healing or a wounding association. So blessings, and have a beautiful new moon.